Bharti Kher is one of India's most important contemporary artists. She and a highly regarded husband, Subodh Gupta, are called the #1 art couple in the country. Bharti's art straddles painting, sculpture and installation. Her works are collected by top museums, art collectors and billionaires. Bharti's art is wide-ranging, but if there is a signature symbol, it's the Bindi on a woman's forehead. In this show, we're going to explore the best works of one of Indian art's biggest stars, Bharti Kher. Bharti, a very warm welcome to Art Talk.
Thank you.
You have a very big, busy studio here, lots of works of art in progress here.
Yeah, I'm working towards exhibitions in 2016 and 17, so yeah, there's a lot of production going on right now.
You were born in England, you studied over there including art school, and then in 1992, you suddenly moved alone to India. What happened?
I had left college, I decided not to do an MA, and I wanted to travel actually, and I decided whether I was going to go between either New York or New Delhi, and I flipped a coin and I decided to come to Delhi.
You flipped a coin? New Delhi or New York?
Yeah, but you know, when you're 22 or 21, you just take impulse. Yeah, you can do those things.
But you came just to travel, you decided to stay. What happened?
I came for 6 months, and then I met Subodh and I stayed, so that's what happened.
I believe you met Subodh within a month of being here.
Yeah, I did.
Both of you were struggling artists at the time.
Yeah.
Subodh was from Bihar, he couldn't speak much English. You were from Britain, you couldn't speak much Hindi. How did this work?
Art makes it work because you have a common struggle, you have a common visual language, I suppose, and you want to do the same thing. So it was kind of, I was looking for a new place to live and understand, and he'd also come from outside of Delhi, and if you're not from Delhi, you know what it's like when you arrive in Delhi. It's pretty similar for everyone.
You feel like an outsider.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you know, both of you have been very lucky for each other because both your careers took off almost in a parallel way after you met each other. You know,
yeah. I mean, if you look at a 20-year trajectory, you could sort of call it a parallel. And there's always going to be, we're not sort of measuring speeds or velocities. Sometimes an artist will move for a few years quite quickly to do many projects, and then you need time to recuperate and restart new things, and somebody else will go off. So yeah, we've been following each other quite rapidly behind each other's heels.
But you don't collaborate with each other on art.
No, it's good, right? I think you could collaborate in life. You don't have to collaborate in everything.
Bharti, let's look at your significant works now from the beginning to now.
Yeah.
In 1996, you were here for a few years, but the Britain you took over, you got this very Indian woman with long black hair, and you called her Asian Babe.
Yeah, Asian Babe was actually a very small doll. She was a little toy that my son had. And I think for me that was the first time that I'd stuck anything on an object. I'd actually stuck sequins onto her and put an Asian, sort of like that doll's head from South India, who sort of does like that. And I put it on the top, and her head would be moving, and she sang the Macarena. And I think it was the first time that I was able to change material and completely transform it.
It's a very interesting piece. I mean, you know, it could be in the living room, it could be in the kids' room as well.
She was kind of a strange mixture between a temple Devidasi, that was the idea, and this sort of pop kitsch culture that I was seeing emerge out of a post-1994 India after the emergence of sort of, you know, Star TV or Star World, when television channels all opened up across India.
Now, I believe in those first few years in India, you used to walk around the streets and markets of Delhi and, you know, just observe life. You wanted to understand India better. It resulted in a work called Hirsute, 1999-2000.
Yeah.
Very interesting. A collage of men's mustaches.
Yeah, I mean, the Hirsute was a kind of, I suppose it was my way of dealing with the idea of the male gaze, which as a woman coming to a city of Delhi is not really specifically a novel phenomena for women to experience.
So it was from a personal experience as well, walking around the streets of Delhi, men just stared at you, and in a sense you captured that.
You know, the collage, I mean, it's strange. It's 252 paintings of different men that I knew. They could have been my guard, my Mali, the fish guy. We were all over, and it took about 3 to 4 weeks to take all the photographs, and then many, many months to make the paintings.
You talked about this work being about the male gaze. There are no eyes over here of the men.
Yeah.
But yet you can almost feel the male gaze without any of the eyes being in the collage.
Yeah, they're strangely sort of erotic in some ways, that work. It's strangely quite sexual. It's sort of it sort of engages you on another sort of more political, what is the mouth then, and how does the mouth then become a politicized part of the face? What comes out of the mouth? What is said? What is unsaid? So the work sort of operates on many levels, I think.
1999, you did your first Bindi work,
Yeah.
Spit and Swallow.
Yeah.
Now, you know, you were to develop almost an obsession with the Bindi.
Yeah.
It's become a sort of signature symbol of yours.
When I first saw that spermatozoa-shaped Bindi, the Sarp Bindi, I was struck how masculine...
On women's foreheads.
Well,
yeah.
I was struck by how feminine and masculine it was at the same time, and how similar it looked to a sperm. And I found it, to be honest, I found it quite amusing. I thought it was quite ironic.
Indian women wear all kinds of bindis, but what seemed to have fascinated you was the sperm-shaped bindis that a lot of women wear.
Yeah, you know, for me it was, I found the 90s to be a kind of strangely, I lived in a very middle-class area. I found middle-class India to be quite conservative, a little bit strangely moralistic, and quite unprepared to talk about sexuality. And of course it's changed a lot now, but I found it, yeah, I thought this is great. You know, women walk around and they wear these sort of strangely erotic symbols on their head, and at some level I'm also saying, what are you seeing? You place them, you wear them, I use them on materials to talk about the day in the life of, say, a person. When they've taken their bindi off, they put it on the mirror in their house to, as a residue of everything and everywhere they've been, all the conversations that they've had.
The bindi sees and hears everything.
It sees everything.
In a woman's day.
And hears everything that's going on in her mind as well. I think I've made it probably larger in my practice than perhaps it even has cause for. But I think that's the prerogative of the artist, to allow myself to take the material and just run with it.
Let's get to 2002. You did your first sculpture called You Are What You See. You had these two street dogs mating with each other, made of fiberglass and rexine, and covered with hundreds of bindis.
Yeah, I realized after I made the first two-dimensional works that the possibilities in 3D could be quite extraordinary just visually. I just thought, what will happen when I start to actually walk around this as opposed to just confront it on a wall?
You later made Rudolph and Bambi as well, and 3 vultures as well, similar three-dimensional concept.
Yeah, what I wanted to do was to look at this, the symbol of the animal, which is something that I've used a lot and manipulated a lot in terms of imagery in my practice, is to take the animals that I'm curious about that somehow represent something that can bring a human quality, so that when you look at them you can read clearly, like the vultures, the 3 vultures that are, one is flying, 2 are standing, and it was, you know, just to sort of, yeah, it was a sort of metaphor for a situation that I found myself in, and I was talking about someone or some people that I knew. Yeah.
Vultures, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
You then did a series of hybrid works. 2004, there's one called Angel.
Yeah.
It's very freaky.
Yeah. They are the women who are amorphous. They're half animal and half human. You don't really know which is more human or which is more animal. They're multifaceted, they're multidimensional. They are the wife, the lover, the whore, the mistress, the sister. They are every avatar of the female, the possibility of a woman. And they're also within a very clearly defined space of the domestic space.
You're trying to show the different roles and different characteristics and emotions that women, indeed all of us, have.
Yes, I think I was also trying to look at the domestic space as the center, the hearth of any given point, any given situation.
Let's move on to your elephant works now.
Okay.
I think the children can come back and watch the show now.
Yeah, exactly. Come back, children.
The first elephant you made was, I've seen an elephant fly.
Yeah.
You had this baby elephant, but the skin was covered with sperm bindis. Very cute, very beautiful.
You know, I've seen an elephant fly, came out, it was the last sculpture after all the animals. And to be honest, I saw the work as a diptych, the mother and the child. And I think I'd made the first mother and child with Angel. And this was probably the second mother and child that I was creating and I was looking at. So I'd made the baby first. It was almost like the baby was born before the mother even emerged in some ways.
The mother, the second elephant came after that.
Yeah.
Now this is the work that made you a very famous artist internationally.
Yeah.
It was a landmark work of yours. It's called The Skin Speaks a Language Not Its Own in 2006.
I wanted to make a dying elephant. My work, as you know, you can see, my work is not always celebratory. There's always a slight dark side to the happiness in the work, to the joy of the work. And so for me, the idea of making an elephant wasn't about, you know, it's not Rajasthan Pavilion where I'm sort of, you know, showcasing something. It's about actually creating something that has empathy, that when you look at it as a person, as a human, you start to feel a sense of the weight of the body.
This was actually a life-size elephant,
Yeah,
covered with thousands of white sperm bindis.
Yeah. You know,
dying elephant,
a dying
like you
elephant.
said.
So the idea was to use the material of the bindis and lift the work somehow, create redemption in the piece. So in a sense, what the bindis do when you look at the work, the whites of the bindis somehow just raise and lift the work up. And she sort of looks like she's floating, but she's sort of dying. So there is a contradiction, there's a lot of contradiction in my work, and I think that's where art can be interesting, when you play with perception, and when you play with what you see and what you know and how you feel when you look at a work.
But let's talk about this work of yours as a landmark work of yours, because it rocketed you to artistic stardom. I mean, you became a star after this. And this elephant work of yours sold for $1.5 million at a Sotheby's auction in 2010.
Yeah, it did.
The highest price for a contemporary woman artist from India. I think the record still stands, by the way.
Maybe, yeah. It's, I mean, I don't really, sometimes you don't know what to say. It's sort of, it's astonishing. It's great to have recognition for your work. And one hopes that works like that go to museums and people get to see the work, actually, which is, for me, probably the most important thing.
All right, 2007, you did another iconic work, Absence of an Assignable Cause. You made the heart of a blue sperm whale.
Yeah.
What made you do that?
You know, after the elephant one, you could have, I wanted to look at another sort of image which was iconic, large, also that I could show at about the same time, that had that sort of presence. And I'm an animal enthusiast. I spend a lot of time reading about strange, you know, the geographical habits of animals, how they live, where they are. And of course, there was this wonderful thing you learn as a child, is like the heart of the blue sperm whale is the largest functioning mammal's heart in the world, and it has an aorta that a small child could climb through. It's the size of a small Volkswagen car. You know, I've been hearing, it's incredible, isn't it? And you hear these, this imagery has stayed with me since I was a kid. And suddenly you just think, well, that's what I need to make. And I spent then about 6 months researching and trying to get images of the heart of a blue sperm whale, and it proved to be extremely difficult. Eventually I found it in New Zealand, from a small whale center, where a friend of mine put me in contact with somebody. And they sent me a picture of the whale heart as a line drawing. And it was strange because it was very similar. There was 3 drawings. One was the human heart, the whale heart, and the heart of the horse, which are strangely quite similar in function, and they have double aortas. So all 3 of these sort of work in the same way. So for me...
So this heart you made was a life-size heart.
Yeah, and I kind of used...
14 feet high, I believe.
Yeah, and I used some artistic license as well, you know. So in some way, it's the idea of the work, the idea of the biggest heart in the world, floating like a big carbuncle in the ocean. An absence of assignable cause. We don't know why we love. We don't know why we have this thing called pain. We don't know why we create, we don't know why we make relationships with other people and feel extreme joy or heartbreak. We don't know what that is, and we don't know why
So
we
this
have
work of yours could be about the mystery behind a whale's death. It could be about the mysteries of the heart.
It's about love.
It's about love.
Yeah.
And just about making a big, fantastical work.
Yeah, exactly.
But looking at the bindis again, because it's become a sort of signature style of yours, what do bindis do for you?
You know, for me now, it's a material. And what I've been able to do, I've created this language. I've made my own language. I've made a new language. And now I speak that language. So what I do is I use it as surface. I use it as a kind of, they're deeply feminine. The interpretations of how you read the works are deeply feminine.
Because a lot of your works are feminine.
I think so.
Or feminist.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You know what's interesting is that bindis are so common in India, but you're probably the first artist to use it as a signature style.
I think, you know, what happens is that you take a material and then you just go on a walk with it.
What's also interesting is that you use hundreds of thousands of bindis, but you don't wear one yourself.
No. Well, yeah, it would be a bit comical, I think, if I started wearing them. Don't you think?
You're not used to the idea.
I think it would just sort of be a reinforcement of something that I don't need to reinforce, actually.
Bharti, let's talk about two powerful trees you've made now. The first is the Solarium series, 2007. The second was the Waq tree, which is the fallen one in 2009.
Right.
Now, if you look at the trees, they look like they're fruits, but if you go closer, you see the fruits are actually heads of animals or some strange creatures. What's the story over here?
There's an 11th century miniature from Persia, and it was called the Waq Waq tree. Now, Alexander the Great, apparently as he came across Persia, consulted his soothsayer, his fortune teller, his right-hand seer, and asked him where he would be in the next year. And he was told to visit the Waq Waq tree in Iran. And the tree, when he met, was the head of thousands of gargoyles and little animals and hybrid creatures of dogs and cats and monkeys and horses and half dragons. And the tree told him that he would not cross India. And I found that story to be quite interesting, of Alexander the Great, and this beautiful small painting. And I decided that I wanted to make this Waq Waq tree. My tree was the first one I made. Again, I made a smaller one first. So again, I made a miniature, a small childlike tree, and a huge tree. And the story of the huge tree, the tree was a standing tree, the huge Waq Waq tree, and it actually fell over.
This happened at the start of your exhibition.
Yeah. So we were, I was doing a show at the Baltic, and going actually back to my hometown at Newcastle where I studied. And as we were installing the afternoon before the opening, the damn tree fell over. And gosh, we watched this huge monster of a thing just crash to the floor. I cried. One sort of was a bit shocked. And then I realized that it actually looked quite good as a fallen tree. And damn it, why didn't I even think of it myself? Because it was actually better as a fallen tree.
The Waq Waq tree was telling you something.
Yeah, that tree spoke and just lay itself down on the floor.
Let's move to 2011 now, the hot winds that blow from the west.
Yeah.
A stack of old rusted radiators. What are you doing over here?
Some of my works take long. They have long germination periods. They sit in the studio for years, maybe 5, 10 years. And the hot winds that blow from the west was one of those. I bought those radiators from the US in maybe 2005, 6, and I shipped them over in a 40-foot container. And it was 12 tons of stuff in my studios. Every time we moved, I had to move these things with me. So they were like this Achilles heel of mine for like 7 years, where I'd be like, oh, I have to move these radiators again. What am I going to do with them? And eventually I realized that I don't have to do anything with them. I just needed to stack them. They talked about heat, and they talked about warning. They talked about everything that I wanted them to say.
What heat? What warning are you talking about?
You know, I think when I was talking about the hot winds that blow from the west, I was not just referring to the loo that comes across the deserts of India, that sort of transforms in the winds of change that come over from west over into Delhi. I was also talking about the winds that come from the other side, from the other parts of the west. And I think the hegemony, you can see how the hegemony in the world has changed. And in a sense, you're looking at...
The balance of power is moving from the west to the east.
The balance of power has been shifting for a long time, and it's
But why hot winds blowing from the west?
The shifting of power structures, for sure. Not to say that the west is old, it's actually to say that the hot winds, it's like the winds of change that come. Be warned, they change. They change the way that people look at the world. They change the way you can see it happening in the world right now.
Let's talk about one more work of yours, 3 decimal point of a minute of a second of a degree.
Yeah.
That's the name of the work.
Yeah. A mouthful, isn't it? Quite a mouthful. Yeah, I made that work as
This is what you made last year, 2014,
yeah,
for the Kochi Biennale.
Yeah, and
yes,
it was a site-specific project. 17 triangles that spoke about how every object has its poise and meaning through balance, and that moment of balance, that actual point of equilibrium, is extremely fragile, and so that at any given point, things can fall into collapse. Perhaps. I mean, I think that there's a lot of balance and.
Balance in individual people's lives,
yeah,
balance in the world, everything is hanging over there,
yeah,
in balance, but
yeah,
it's fragile.
It's fragile, yeah.
In this show, we've seen a wide range of your work.
Yeah.
What's the common thread over here?
The body, the engagement with the body, the fact that we are uniquely human, that our weaknesses and our vulnerabilities are not things that we should necessarily be afraid of, that we should not necessarily embrace perhaps, but we shouldn't be afraid of showing that failure also is a path to look at the failed projects. Sometimes I think that the Radiators was a failed project, but by failing all the other ways of reaching the work, I reached exactly the kind of purity and parity I needed of the work.
Bharti, let's take a break. We'll come back with a rapid fire round.
Sure.
Yeah?
Okay.
All right. One of India's leading contemporary artists, Bharti Kher, is on the show. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Art Talk with me, Jujhar Singh. One of India's leading contemporary artists, Bharti Kher, is on the show. Bharti, a quick rapid fire round. First, what does it take to be a successful artist?
I think you have to have a lot of tenacity and perseverance. You need to read widely. You need to be very curious about your subject and read a lot of art history. Just look at all the artists before you and see what they've done. And I think more than anything, you have to decide that you want to create a language that belongs to you. And once you've decided that, you stick with it.
The Indian artists you admire the most?
All of them, 2nd century, Chola bronze, all the way up to Himmat Shah, Arpita Singh, contemporary artists, Shilpa Gupta, Atul Dodia, Subodh Gupta. And there's hundreds. You know, I like artists, I just like art. I think if you have the courage to be an artist, and I like you.
Next, what is good art?
Good art has the power to take you somewhere that you don't know. It's not here to make you feel good about yourself necessarily, but it can also do that. And it's transformative. It sort of moves you from places that you're comfortable with and makes you ask questions.
For better or for worse?
For better and worse, for better or for worse.
Finally, what are you working on now?
Projects for 2016. So a show at the Freud Museum in London, which I'm excited to do. A solo show in Paris, Sydney Biennale, and another project in Perth, and a very large museum retrospective in Vancouver. So next year, busy year for me.
Bharti Kher, what a ride it's been.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for
It's
joining
my
us on
pleasure.
our tour.
Thank you so much.